Margaret Browning said, "Earth is crammed with heaven, and every bush is aflame with the fire of God. But only those who see take off their shoes, the rest just pick the berries." Do we see? You know, I think it was C.S. Lewis that wrote about how we get impressed when the Lord turns water into wine, when he does it fast. But there's never been any wine that ever became wine that it didn't become wine because he turned it into wine from water. The processes he made in the earth. Things happen. Whether it happens fast or slow, it's still God and still a miracle. Now, I don't think any healing. You know, we love the ones that are healed instantly, but I don't think there's ever been a healing done that wasn't done by God. And some of it is just the natural processes that he put in our bodies to heal itself. It's still him. He put those there. You know, and do you know supernatural is supernatural? I think when we start seeing him in the natural, we're going to see him a whole lot more. And I think as we see him, we grow in faith in him and what he's doing. Now, I love it when he speeds it up. You know, instantaneous miracles. We've been blessed to see some extraordinary ones. But here's the greatest, one of the greatest that leads up to the greatest important truth that I believe we could ever have as human beings. Colossians 2:2-4, that their hearts may be encouraged, having been knit together in love, and attaining to all the wealth that comes from the full assurance of understanding, resulting in a true knowledge of God's mystery. Then he says what the mystery is. That is Christ himself, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. It's not knowing about him, not just knowing where he sits. It's knowing him. It's abiding in him. We only have true spiritual authority to the degree that the King lives within us and that we're united with the King. We get our authority from him. Now, we know from John, he was the creator. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness. Darkness didn't comprehend it. I believe many Christians are still doing what they were doing in Athens. Many who call themselves Christians really believe in the Christian doctrine. They're still worshiping an unknown God. They're worshiping facts about him, maybe real facts, real truth. We've got to know him. Many come to know the way. A few more are going to know the truth. Not many go on to know him as their life. And if we don't really know him as our life, we don't really know the way or truth either. Because the way is not just getting a few facts together and agreeing with those facts. The way is a person. Truth isn't just getting our doctrines accurate, though we want to do that. But it's not just being accurate in our doctrines. Truth is a person. And if we don't know that person as our life, I don't think we really know the way or truth either. Now, there can still be benefit to knowing the truths and knowing the way. But the demons know the way. You know, demons know the gospel of salvation. They're not saved. You know, it wouldn't have done you any good on the day of Passover, first Passover, to know that a lamb had to be slain. That wouldn't have done you any good. Wouldn't have done you any good to slay the lamb and eat it in your house. That would not have spared you. The blood had to be applied. Is his blood being applied to our life? The life is in the blood. Is his life being applied to our life? That's by which we're saved. Listen, the demons know doctrine's better than most Christians. We've got to go beyond that. We've got to know him. It says, Romans 1:20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen. There's only a few times in Scripture when that phrase is used, clearly seen, and it represents something very high level. Not even the normal seeing, but have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made. Okay, there's a way that the creation reveals him, like every bush is aflame with the fire of God. Can we see it? This is what we're talking. We've got to have the eyes of our hearts open to see. Now, so, it talks about in Psalm 19:1, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Do we see that? I mean, there's some ways we do. We get impressed, more and more impressed with what's being discovered. I shared this with you Thursday morning. This picture, which I'm going to show you now. You know that picture? It's been called the most important image ever taken. Ever. It's called the Hubble Deep Field. And why would that picture be the most important picture ever taken? Because they were taking a picture of what they believed was empty space, where nothing was. And what you see in this picture is about 2,000 galaxies, each one with hundreds of billions of stars. And we thought there's nothing there. They said, when the word was first put out, I remember watching some of the programs. This is the first picture taken by the Hubble telescope. They said they pointed at empty space as like a square inch. If you could imagine pointing a telescope at a square inch of blank sky at night, took the picture. It was a time picture, so and then finding this in it, they said actually it would have been more like pointing your telescope at a grain of sand in the night sky. It was that small. It's got 2,000 galaxies in it. And that's what I was told a few years ago the Lord's going to do to us. He called it the miracle of the Hubble. He's going to do for us what was done to the Hubble telescope, and what was done to it when they first put it up there. All the fanfare. Started taking pictures of space. They couldn't see anything. It was blurry. The vision, it didn't work. The telescope didn't work. So you know what they had to do? They said, grounding that lens, the lens had to be perfect to see that deep into space. What you're looking at in this picture, these galaxies are, some of them, billions of light years from Earth. A light year is how far light travels in a year. They were that far out. To have the kind of clarity to pick up light and for it to be, not blurred, to be clear, that telescope, that lens had to be so perfect. It wasn't perfect though. They said it was off. I think Nick told me the other day it was off by 1/50th, the width of 1/50th of a human hair. And they couldn't see anything. They had sent astronauts up to put what they called a contact lens on the Hubble. And then they want to see, can it see anything? Is it fixed? They pointed at this empty space first, and this is the first picture ever taken. Why is it called the most important image ever taken? It opened the minds of everybody who, astronomers, physicists, everybody who was keeping up with this, all of a sudden our universe is millions of times bigger than we thought. Where we thought at the time there are a few 100 million galaxies out there, instantly became trillions of galaxies out there. Now that's a jump. We're going to get that kind of jump. And one of the things it's going to do, we're going to be able to look at people where we think there's nothing in that person, and God's going to open our eyes to what he's doing. We're going to look at churches, and we're going to think nothing's going on in that church. All of a sudden, he's going to open our eyes, and we're going to see stuff we could never imagine. We're going to look at nations the same way. I think it's the basis of the Ezekiel 37. One of the most important anointings that we can have in this time or any time is what Ezekiel had there when he could see in a valley full of dry bones an exceedingly great army and prophesy life to those bones until they became what they were called to be. There's a saying that any jackass can kick a barn down, but it takes a skillful carpenter to build one. You know, we got plenty of critics. We got plenty of prophetic critics who all they do is criticize the church. You know, basically what they're doing is telling the bones how dry they are. You idiot, nobody knows that more than the bones. You know, that's not prophetic ministry, that is pathetic ministry. Who can see people not as they are, but as they're called to be? And start prophesying life so that they can start to move and come together and become what they're called to be. That's the anointing we want. Now, that one picture, the Hubble Deep Field, changed our whole perspective of the creation. In some ways, profoundly, radically changed our perspective of the creation or what has been made. I think we need such a transformation. Christians need such a transformation. You know, one of the things they learn right away, we don't know as much as we think we know about anything. Science. They're saying all of a sudden they're getting really humble. This thing is so big, we thought we knew. We don't know much at all. Guess what? The greatest theologians in the world don't know near as much as they think they do. Greatest preachers, teachers, writers, we all know in part. We know a little part. We're about to have our understanding of God expanded like this thing did to us. Okay? Now, so, Lord's going to enlarge our vision, but remember this, you don't have to know everything. Vance Havner, remember the great evangelist, Vance Havner? He said you don't have to know all about electricity to turn the switch on. We can't know everything there is to know. Nobody can. We all know in part, we see in part. To have the whole picture, we got to come together. And we got to have the humility to come together. Understand, we need to put ours together with what others have. But he's about to do something that's going to really expand our vision and our mind. Now, Jesus said, truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also, and greater works than these will he do, because I go to the Father. He said, if we really believe in him, we're going to do the works that he did, and even greater works. I think we got a ways to go. Now, that word is believe into him. Are we believing into him? Listen, I was so arrogant, just a few years ago, I was sitting on my porch over here, and I'm just calling out to God, Lord, I want to preach the apostolic. God, I want to preach Christ. I want to, preach the resurrection, but I just need some new material. I've run out of material. And I've read the scriptures at least once a year for over 50 years. And I just need some more material. A little wren, a little sparrow lands on the banister right in front of me. And I knew this, sparrows don't do that. They'll come close sometimes, but not this close. I could almost reach out and touch it. And it's looking at me. And I'm looking at it. And all of a sudden, I got a download of revelation of Christ, the Creator. I don't think it lasted more than a minute. But my first response was, Lord, it's going to take more than one life for me to just process what you just showed me. He can do that sometimes. I said, I'll be the rest of my life. He said, yeah, no, it's going to be longer than that. You're going to be eternity learning the depths of Christ. Eternity. Doesn't it say in Ephesians 1, all things are going to be summed up in Him? All things. Every one of us, the ultimate goal of God for every one of us is that we're summed up in Christ. He is everything. He's what we're after. And trust me, we're going to be learning of Him. Now, when we become like Him in some ways at the resurrection, but listen, we are going to be learning forever. We're going to be perpetually fascinated, awed. It is not going to be boring. I remember when I was a new Christian, I first read Isaiah 6. Here are these cherubim going, holy, 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 day and night, forever. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. The whole earth is filled with His glory. First thing I thought, they're lying. They are lying. With all the child abuse, the racism, the wars, and all the evil, how could they possibly say the whole earth is filled with His glory? They got to be bored out of their minds. Can you imagine forever just going, holy, holy, holy? That's how I was saying. I'm a new Christian. I'm even stupider than I am now. But that was the way I thought about it. And then the Lord spoke to me. He said, the reason they could say that, the whole earth is filled with His glory, when you're in my presence, all you can see is glory. And if you walk in my presence and abide in my presence, everyone you look at, you're going to start to see my glory in them. You're going to start to see my glory in what I'm doing with them, where I'm like, you're going to start to abide in His glory. And all you're going to be doing is holy, holy, holy. But they weren't just going holy, holy, holy. It wasn't some religious exercise. It was like they were going, holy, did you see that? I mean, it was like perpetual, unbelievable amazement at God, and they had the best seats in the house. Are we fascinated with Him? I tell you, there is no more fascinating being ever in the universe in all of eternity than Him. We've got Him living inside of us. Do we even realize that? Who is living in us? That's what Paul said. Don't you understand? You're the temple God's in you. Well, have you ever wondered why all the great moves of God in history are outpourings, not downpourings? He's about to be revealed in His people, through His people. It's going to start with us seeing Him in here, in us. Now, let me just say this. There's fake news. You guys understand there is fake news. I think most of the news is fake, my opinion, but it's twisted, distorted, politicized. It's from both directions. There's fake science also, a lot of it. And I can tell you this about true science. They're not made true scientists. They're not made true disciples of Christ. You read the qualifications for being a disciple, you read what Jesus said his disciples would be, and you think, I don't even know one. Listen, you can still be saved and not be a disciple. I think the multitudes that followed him, they believed in him. They believed in his miracles, his power, and all this, or they wouldn't have been following him. They experienced and saw that, but only a few were disciples. Now, the Great Commission is to make disciples, not just converts. There's merit to being a believer and doing the best you can. Lord knows those who are his, but there's a whole new level to being a disciple. Disciple doesn't, in those times, a disciple could not have any other thing in their life that would possibly distract them from learning of their master. And they woke up every day, first thought on their mind, what can I learn from my master today? What can I do to become more like my master today? We need disciples. We need to start becoming disciples. We need to make disciples. I tell you, there is nothing on this earth more contagious than someone who's getting closer to God. Everybody wants to be around. They don't know what it is, but there is nothing. There is no coronavirus or anything else even close to as contagious as hunger for God, love for God, and those who are getting closer to him. That's our number one job description, is loving God. As human beings, that's our number one job description. And one of the things going to determine if we were successful or not, how much do we love him? That's not something you can't just conjure up love. You've got to pursue. And there's something, I believe you cannot have a revelation of God without loving him more. He is love. You cannot learn or see any little thing about him without loving him more for it. But we need some true Christians. We need some true shepherds, true prophets, apostles, everything else. We need some true who are true because they're living this. Now, this quote about science says, true science has more questions than answers. True science does not have any answers that cannot be questioned. You know who said that? The one who's still considered the greatest scientist there ever was, Albert Einstein. Now apply that to the way climate change is being presented. You question it, you're dead. You'll never be a scientist again. You'll lose your grants, you'll lose. That's not true science. True science wants to be challenged, wants to find any mistake, any flaw. Well, I tell you, I believe that should be the nature of true Christians too, because God resists the proud and gives his grace to the humble. And what could be more valuable to us than God's grace? I think there's a lot more fake science in the world than true science, but I think there's a lot more fake Christianity than true Christianity. True knowledge of God. Now, do you know that, I'm just going to have to give you a little bit of a science lesson. I'm not going to drag this out too much longer. But as long as you stay awake, I'm going to keep talking. Okay, but Einstein's first theory of general relativity was wrong. It was flawed. He had included in it an equation where you had to divide by 0. Didn't you learn by the 4th grade you can't do that? How can you divide by 0? Why? So Einstein believed in a static universe. It's always been this way, will always be that way. Didn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. He was an atheist because he believed the universe was static. That would not work into his theory of general relativity, so he put this stupid equation in there of divide by 0 to make it work, to make it static. It was Edwin Hubble that the Hubble telescope is named after, the astronomer who at the time had the biggest telescope in the world. And anyway, it was Hubble that gave Einstein his missing link that corrected his theory of relativity. And it brought about all the change, radical change we've experienced because of that. But he saw what was called the red shift. You ever hear of that? Hubble, which meant when an object is moving away from you, the light waves will get longer and longer and start to have a red tint to them. If an object is coming to you, towards you, it will have a blue tint because the light waves are shorter and shorter as it gets closer and closer to you. So when Hubble looked up and he tuned his telescope in every direction, he saw the red shift everywhere. He knew right away the universe is expanding. It is not static. When Einstein read that, he went himself out to California where Hubble had his telescope up on the mountain, went up there. He had to see it with his own eyes, but the minute he saw it himself, he believed in a creator. It couldn't be doing this. It couldn't be expanding if it didn't have a starting point. And if it had a starting point, somebody started this. That's when he started to believe. And anyway, you guys know this, E equal MC square? You know, that was his equation, basic equation of general relativity. There's a spiritual E equal MC square we're about to discover. Now, you know what the power of E equal MC squared is in the natural. E was for energy, M for mass, C for speed of light, squared. It was the conversion of energy to mass or mass to energy. Remember, if you know the basic first law of thermodynamics, law of conservation, all of you know all this, I know. But energy cannot be destroyed. It can change forms, but it cannot be destroyed. Neither can mass. It can change forms, but it can't be destroyed. You know, all of the matter in the universe was here instantly from what scientists have called the Big Bang. I think there's a much better name for it, but that's what they call it. Instantly, all of the energy, all of the matter that is now in the universe was there in the very beginning in a very compact thing, and it's been expanding or exploding ever since. Okay? But energy cannot be destroyed. It can only change. Same with matter. But they can be converted. Matter can become energy, and energy can become matter. This is what led to the atomic bomb. You know how much mass was converted to energy in our first atomic bombs? 0.6 of a gram. And look at the power that was released. Do you know how light, how small a gram of anything is? How many grams are there in an ounce? You know what? A gram is 0.6, almost half of a gram was all it took to set off that kind of energy when it was converted. guess what? We're going to see conversions of truth like this into power. Moving mountains is not going to be a big deal. You know, when Moses parted the Red Sea, the angels were bored. They had seen a lot better things than that. They had seen the heavens stretch out like a tent curtain. And now we understand how big those heavens are. I'm just saying, this miracle of the Hubble is coming. A spiritual E equal MC squared. All right? The theory of relativity is still a theory. Had many convincing evidences that it's true. Learning them all the time that he really got it right. They're piling on. Has anyone here ever done any study of quantum physics or quantum mechanics? Okay. You can be a Christian, but let me just say this about quantum physics and quantum mechanics. They were the most bizarre theories anybody has ever come up with yet, even far more bizarre than the theory of relativity, where even time could change, time could stand still, where there could be actual places of infinity, of touching infinity and black holes and things like that. This was all in Einstein's equations, and now they're being proven. Quantum mechanics and quantum physics to me is far weirder than that, but it's about the small stuff, strands and all kinds of waves nobody's ever seen in even the most powerful microscopes, but we know they exist, even though they may not be in exactly the form we're given to them now, but we know they exist because of other observations. Like we learned there were black holes because of the gravitational pull. They had something that was black, looked like nothing in space, you can't see it, but it's having all this impact on all the stars and everything. They knew the mass of it had to be, they could compute what the mass was, and it was beyond anything we knew even existed. Okay, so there are ways they really can figure this stuff out, but all the ways that the theory of relativity has been seemingly proven or verified, they still don't consider, true scientists still don't consider, no, we got a ways to go yet to absolutely prove all this. Quantum physics and mechanics, same way. All kinds of ways it looks like this is really true. All this is accurate. It's behaving like we would expect. They're still calling it a theory. Guess what? They do not meet. The theory of relativity, which to me is about the universe, and quantum physics and mechanics that in many ways verify the theory of relativity, but a lot of things about them that have been verified do not connect in any way to the theory of relativity. They don't know how to connect them, but they know they're both true. This means there is such a massive hole in our understanding of things. We're only comprehending the smallest fraction of knowledge. I tell you, all the laws of physics we have, trust me, there are probably a gazillion more laws we don't know about yet. God's big. He is really big. Now, one of my favorite stories, I got a lot of favorite stories about Nicholas, this guy sitting over here with the white dog. But this is one of the most amazing. We're going to do some TV and get this down on video, Lord willing, real soon. But Nicholas's mother started painting galaxies and things like this. Well, wasn't that in the 60s and 1960s or whatever? Yeah. Well, the way she was getting pictures of all these galaxies and things were, the Lord would come and take her and show them to her out in space. Okay, but they didn't look like any that anybody had ever seen. And she has books, I mean, incredible pictures and all this stuff. No one knew they existed. They thought she's making stuff up until they turned the Hubble telescope on and they saw the pictures she had been drawing, that the Lord had taken her out to show her. Her paintings are in the Smithsonian now. NASA honored her in a big way. James Webb, who this new telescope is named after, actually invited Nick's mother to go for a ride on the space shuttle. And Nick's dad shot it down. Said, "You're not taking my wife up there." but that would have been cause for divorce in my book. Man, I'm going. But anyway, the incredible experience. Then the Soviet Space Agency brought them over. Nick went over there with his mother. He said he had never seen so many generals and cosmonauts and everybody all decked out to honor his mother because she had seen what nobody else had seen before anybody else had seen it. And they ran into how many of these cosmonauts were Christians. But I'm just saying, how about Psalm 19, verse 1? The heavens are declaring his glory. Now, I love this stuff. I love science. I mean, I love the greatest science more than any of the others. The greatest, I think, is theology. We're studying the Creator, not just the creation. But I love it all. I read it all, maybe too much, but I love it. But I know more than anything else, I am so excited about what I've been shown that I believe some of you sitting right here are going to actually see and walk in and experience. Our God is about to get much bigger. His creation's getting unbelievably big. We now believe there are trillions of galaxies, with each one with hundreds of billions of stars, and he stretched them out like a head-tin curtain. Do you know we found out that if there weren't quasars billions of light years away, and they had to be that far away, we could not have a food chain on Earth? This is how linked everything is. If you know what a gamma burst is from a quasar, if one went off in our third of the Milky Way, which is huge, hundreds of billions of stars, in our third, it could wipe out all life on Earth within 20 seconds. It's how big those gamma bursts are. But after billions of light years of traveling through space, they're not quite that strong when they hit the Earth, but they're strong enough to do one thing. We used to think that lightning was created by positive and negative particles reaching up, trying to reach each other. Then they found out that's not what's going on at all. Gamma bursts are hitting thunderclouds and igniting the lightning, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have any plant life or any life on Earth. It's lightning striking the Earth, which it does 30 to 60,000 times a minute on Earth. If it wasn't for lightning striking the Earth and turning the nitrogen in the soil into that which could be absorbed in the plants, we wouldn't have any food. There would be no life on Earth. And it had to come from stars that far out. And we didn't learn it, we didn't even know gamma burst existed until we put up satellites to watch over the Soviet nuclear tests. And those satellites started getting hit by gamma bursts from space much stronger than the gamma bursts coming from the nuclear explosions on the Earth. I said, where's this coming from? They tracked it down. They learned all this. Just think God put all that out there so we could have a salad. Thinking about us. He didn't want them close enough to kill us, just to feed us. And I don't know, this just really excites. We have such an awesome God. He is so much bigger than we have ever perceived. But here's the greatest secret, greatest knowledge that is going to release this in our lives. Colossians 1, 26 through 28. The mystery which has been hidden from the past ages and generations, but has now been manifested to his saints, to whom God willed to make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. The key to the spiritual E = MC squared, turning the matter, the truths, the knowledge into energy or power, is when we start to really see the one who lives within us. And we abide in him. We walk with him. If you had gotten out of bed this morning and he had been standing next to your bed, how many of you would have had a little different day? 2 of you. You're more spiritual than I thought. How would it change us if we saw him first thing and then all day long? And we come to abide in him more and more. How much could he use us when we go to a place, instead of us being hit with this weird spirit and start thinking what's wrong with us, we start to discern the Lord is showing us something about somebody. He wants to help. He wants us to walk like he walked. Our job is to be like him and do the works that he did. And we start doing that, we really start walking in the knowledge of the one who lives within us. It's going to grow into greater works than even he did when he walked the earth. It's going to release, transforming a little bit of truth into life, into power. The power of life is going to be explosive like we've never seen before. And you know, if you ever read about the scientists, Oppenheimer and those guys who developed the first atom bomb, they didn't know really what was going to happen. They thought when this thing goes off, we may not be able to control this chain reaction. It might blow up the world. They really thought it's possible this will consume all the energy and all the oxygen on Earth. They didn't know. One of the best, funniest science programs I ever saw was a reporter interviewing the scientists at that super collider they built in France and Switzerland. And this scientist was trying to explain to this reporter on the density of the mass of a black hole. And he said the density is so great, the gravitational force so powerful. He said even a small black hole could consume our entire solar system, just suck it right up if it came near to us. And he was explaining all this. And then he goes on, he said, okay, well, what are you trying to do with the super collider? Why are you just trying to get atoms to collide? And the scientist says, well, we're trying to recreate a small Big Bang, like created the universe. Just a replica of the Big Bang. And we think when we do this, it's going to create some really small black holes. And this reporter goes, how small? And the scientist immediately got it. He said, no, listen, and we're not going to blow up. And he said, it won't. He said, how small? And the guy goes, well, we are totally confident in our calculations. And the guy goes, I'm not that confident. He said, we're not going to suck up the solar system or anything else with our little black holes. He said, well, suppose you just suck up Switzerland and France. That's still bad. Do you know what you're doing here? I mean, it was, I wish I could find that again but listen, our science, didn't you not learn under COVID? These guys really, thank God they're trying, but you know, they don't know near as much as they think they do. But thank the Lord, though, that they are trying. I do thank the Lord for, look, we wouldn't be here, wouldn't have this computer. How did Paul the Apostle do anything without one of these? You know, I mean, all the blessings we have from it. But listen, we're not near as smart as we think we are. And that's a good thing. Should keep us humble, and God gives us grace to the humble. We don't want to start thinking when the Lord uses us to do such great things, it's because of us. It's because of the one living within us. And our job is to be open for him to use us. Now, the Holy Spirit is the helper, not the doer. He won't do his part until we do our part. Our part is to know him, to seek him, to worship him, to see him, to preach him. And when he is lifted up, all men are going to be drawn. And it's going to be the greatest harvest ever seen. But listen, the power that's about to be released is on a whole new level than I'd ever perceived. I've been perceiving a lot for many years. I know it's going to be much, much bigger than that. We don't know who sitting at the table with us might be moving mountains around in the not too distant future, as God determines where he wants them moved. He hasn't given me that authority, because I'd be out there in the Rockies right now playing around, moving them where I want them to be. He's looking for a little maturity and a little stability so that we only do what we see him doing and don't just start wrecking things. Let's get there. What do we have better to do? So let's see some of the truth he's given to us converted to that power, that energy. Thank you so much.